So cleaning your gas grill is a pretty important chore that you're probably neglecting. And as barbecue season's coming up, it's actually a pretty important thing to keep up with routine maintenance. So in today's video, I want to give you guys some tips and tricks, go over some cleaning advice, and why in particular it's especially important to clean your gas grill versus, let's say, a charcoal grill like a kettle grill. Let's dive in. All right, so right here we do have one of my gas grills, which is the Monument Grill Denelli 605 Pro. The model of the grill and the manufacturer doesn't matter too much. You can see that it's actually pretty dirty. I use this grill fairly often. It's sort of my daily driver for quick meals, quick dinners. And then I personally prefer charcoal grills, so I'll use my Weber kettles, which I think are probably the best grills out there for your money, on weekend cooks, specialty things, smoking, and so forth. Now there is actually a difference, and you should still clean your kettle grill, but in my personal opinion, it's a lot easier to do than a gas grill, and I'll talk about why later on. But I'm also going to save that for another video. So if you like this video, look for a future video where I talk about how to clean a charcoal grill, in particular a kettle grill, or tips on how to clean one. So routine cleaning is actually a really important thing, and it's going to ensure that your food is always tasting good. You're always tasting what you're intending on cooking. For example, if you're cooking up some salmon, you shouldn't be tasting any leftover bits or leftover flavor from, let's say, a pork roast or maybe a ribeye steak that you did, or lamb. And making sure that your grill is maintained periodically will also save you a lot of headache in the future, because you're going to eventually need to deep clean it, and I usually do that once a season. But if you're letting it go, you're probably going to have to really deep clean it, maybe more than just once a season, and who wants to do that? It's a pain in the ass unless you enjoy cleaning things. Now, I promised I was going to tell you why gas grills in particular are different than, let's say, kettle grills or charcoal grills when it comes to cleaning and maintenance. Gas grills tend to flare up or catch on fire, have grease fires when they're dirty, because grease tends to pool in all the nooks and crannies. And because gas grills require different airflows than, let's say, a charcoal grill or charcoal, in order to ignite and stay ignite, having a grease fire can be a little tricky, because you can't just simply close the lid like you would with a kettle grill and snuff it out completely. Because with a gas grill, even if you close the lid, you still have airflow. There's still air coming in through the side vents and the back, which is still fueling the grease fire. So you just want to tend to just be a little bit more cautious with gas grills and get those nooks and crannies, and make sure you get rid of the grease. Now, carbon buildup versus grease is two separate things. Carbon buildup is literally stuff that's just burnt to a crisp and it's literally turning into ash, right? It's just carbon buildup. Grease, on the other hand, is still in its liquid form. There's a lot of stored energy in grease, and when it ignites, it ignites. Which brings me to my second point. The plumbing in gas grills also contributes to those factors. Just the basic plumbing, just having all the tubes, the gas lines, the burners, all that stuff. There's more possibility of grease and gunk getting into those nooks and crannies and influencing the taste of your food, causing a grease fire, or just being a pain in the ass to clean. So let's talk about pooling for a bit. Grease loves to pool in the worst places you can think about. You could be cooking something and it is just pooling in an area that you don't see. And as it pools more and more, think of it as like kerosene, or, I don't know, oil, lantern oil, whatever you want to call it. It's just pooling and pooling, and eventually when it does ignite, it ignites, and you'll see it. This grill in particular has a window, a clear window that you can kind of keep an eye on your cook. So there's times when I'm watching it and I can see that grease is catching fire and I'm able to snuff it out real quick before it becomes a problem. But if you don't have this luxury, you really don't know until you start seeing black smoke. When you start seeing black smoke, you know something's wrong. Usually something's burning, usually there's a grease fire with gas grills. So as things are dripping, it tends to pool down here, not in the tray, not in the drip pan. People assume that the grease is actually pooling in the drip pan. It can, especially if your drip pan is dirty, and now you've kind of created this like little dam for grease to pile into, but it's actually going to pool right underneath the grates at the fillet or the flare of the burners. That's a really common place for grease to kind of pool and pile up. And then you also have actually in the burners themselves. The flavorizer bars do a great job of, you know, keeping everything away. But certain flavorizer bars, like the one that I have here in this grill, have little slots for airflow, and some of them are larger than others. This one actually does a good job, but I've had ones that are much larger, and grease tends to run down there and then come in from underneath and then drip down to the bars and pull in that area. And that will actually cause two things. You do run the risk of having a grease fire, but also you'll have poor performance with your burner. You'll notice that the output of your gas grill is just not getting as hot as it used to be because, well, it's pooled there and you have blockage in the actual burners themselves. Now, if I bring you guys closer, you'll notice that with my gas grill, you'll see that there's a lot of carbon buildup, and I'm not too worried about that, but you'll also see areas of pooled grease. So let me take off the grill grate for you and you'll see exactly what I mean. I'm not necessarily too worried about this, right? It's just carbon buildup and some of it's turning into ash. But if you look just below that, and here's the area that I was talking about before, that is a common area for grease to pool. And that's where you're gonna see grease. And that's actually quite a bit of grease right there. And it's going to melt and run and warm up when the barbecue gets warmed up, and it basically becomes an ignition source. So all these little nooks and crannies, that's where you really need to pay attention, including underneath where the burners are. And you can actually see that there's pulled up grease right under the burner, and even worse, right next to the igniter, you can see more pulled up grease. So this grill is actually not too bad. This is easy stuff that I can scrape off, but I've seen it a lot worse where you have to go with like more drastic measures. So something that I used to do with my previous gas grills that I don't do anymore, and it's just personal preference. I know a lot of people do it and it's fine if you want to do it, but I don't put foil on my drip tray anymore. I used to do it because I used to think that it's just collecting everything and it's making it easier for me to toss all that gunk out by just removing the foil, throwing that away, and my drip tray stays good, right? The problem that I saw with that is, yes, there's some convenience not having to clean the drip tray or scrape it off as frequently. But the issue that I saw is the foil is not skin tight, and it's actually causing areas of pooling because the foil naturally gets air in it and rises and expands with the heat and all that stuff. And then you end up getting pools of grease and it ends up causing more grease fires. The drip tray is already designed by the manufacturer, if it's a good manufacturer, and this grill, the Monument Grill, they did a great job with the drip tray as it is. It's already designed to funnel all that grease into the catch tray that's underneath, which is a aluminum drip tray that I have there, and that's collecting all the grease, and you can toss that away. So I actually have it here right now. That's the drip tray. And you can see that there's a lot of grease that was caught already in this aluminum catch tray. And all I gotta do is take the aluminum out, toss this, there's an aluminum pan in here, and all I gotta worry about now is cleaning the actual barbecue grill's larger drip tray. Now look, if I'm being honest, I absolutely hate cleaning the drip tray, but it's not too bad. Just remove it out, grab a scraper. Most barbecue grill brushes have a scraper. Just take out your drip tray, set it on your trash can, and just scrape everything off. And if everything's going smoothly, most of that's gonna be carbon buildup and it's just gonna scrape right off. And anything that's left over, pools of grease, you can just wipe away or clean with some soap and water. But before I do that, I'll use the scraper to scrape off all those nooks and crannies. Like I said before, those edges, those flared edges, the fillets, all those areas that have a chance of pooling grease, including the burners. I'll scrape the burners gently, make sure those are all cleared. And then once everything gets kind of like collected in the tray, I'll take that out and I'll scrape all that out. So as long as you're doing this periodically, and that's why I said do it periodically, it's not too bad, right? But if you're letting your grill get dirty for years and years and years, it becomes this like huge deep cleaning project that you have to do. I'll discuss what options you have for those particular scenarios. So I kind of already touched up on this a bit, but another great way of deep cleaning your grill, quote unquote, is to do burn-offs. When you first buy a grill, the manufacturer suggests doing an initial burn-off, which means basically running your grill at the highest temperatures, the highest setting it can go to. And like this grill, for example, can easily reach 700, 800 degrees Fahrenheit if I let it go. And allowing the manufacturing grease, that initial manufacturing grease when you first bought it, to burn off. You can just start cooking right after that. Everything kind of burns off. You can actually smell the grease burning, the oils, the manufacturing oils burning. You can do the same thing with your grill when it's dirty. There's times when, like this, for example, this would be a perfect time to do this. I'm gonna take care of the grease spots, right? I don't want any flare-ups to happen or a grease fire to happen. So I'll scrape those off real quick or maybe wipe them down. But everything else, I'll crank this grill up for 20, 30 minutes, highest setting it'll go, and literally turn everything into black carbon. And then it's a lot easier just to scrape everything off into that tray, put it over my trash cans, scrape it off into there, and that usually does it. Now, as far as like wiping everything else down, the sheet metal and the aesthetics, that's completely up to you. I personally don't care. I'll clean the window, right? This particular grill has the view window, and I'll make sure that that's in tip-top shape. But aesthetically on the inside, I don't necessarily care as much. On the outside, I do care, and I'll take some stainless steel cleaner or even some soap and water. Soap and water will actually do wonders and just clean everything down. Now, something else that I want to talk about was, all right, what if you neglect your grill? And I'm talking about really neglect it. So you do have a couple of options. There's a lot of things you can do. I think the most practical, probably the most popular thing to do is go to your nearest store. I don't necessarily recommend this, but go to your nearest store and get barbecue cleaner and spray your barbecue down, degreaser, and they make them specific for barbecue grills that are less toxic. I think Weber has one, for example. The smell of that stuff just gives me a headache. I've seen people use pressure washers. Pressure washers work really, really well with like a kettle grill where there's no piping, there's no burners you have to worry about, there's no water getting into the system, and it's just so much easier on a kettle grill. And this is why it's different. I'm gonna make a video on kettle grills, but you can just pressure wash the whole thing and you're done in like 15 minutes. Now you are spraying all that gunk on your sidewalks and your yard and all that, so that's something to consider. But pressure washing is a popular option. Can you do it with the gas grill? Yes. I would just be extra careful around the plumbing, the burners, and definitely dry off the grill by when you're done, turn it on and just letting everything evaporate. California barbecuing season is all year long. So once a year, for my particular case, I will deep clean the barbecue with soap and water. Put on some gloves, soap and water, Scotch-Brite, clean everything up, and it comes out fantastic. Other than that, I just periodically clean. And that means using my grill brush and getting those pools of grease like we talked about and scraping the tray. Another thing I want to talk about, this is a good segue, let's talk about grill brushes because they're not all created equal. So I have a couple of grill brushes here. And if you guys don't know already, I made a video a couple years back regarding grill brushes and the dangers of grill brushes, because those cheapy ones with the small little bristles that you buy for like $2, the ones that your dad used to use, are actually really, really, really dangerous. What ends up happening is those little bristles, they're really tiny, they're hard to see, they break off, sometimes they sit on the grates, and then when you cooking up your food, they stick into your food, you can't see them, and then you ingest them. They either get caught in your mouth, if you're lucky, in your gums, which that happened to me. One got caught right in my gum as I was eating. It was so painful. Or even worse, you swallow it, it gets caught in your throat or in your stomach, which is really bad. And oftentimes doctors don't know, right, what's going on until you've described the situation and they x-ray you and they figure out, oh, okay, you ingested a bristle, which ends up meaning you're gonna need surgery. Kids in particular have this issue. Kids don't necessarily see that or identify a bristle and stop. Kids don't necessarily pay attention to their food as they're eating it. They're watching TV or they're playing or whatever, or they're just daydreaming. So it's really important to get safe bristles. Now I have two that I like to use here. And I know there's other things out there and you can buy whatever you feel comfortable with. Like I know that there's the BBQ Rescue Brush. I think it's called the Rescue Brush. The one that the firefighters, I think they were firefighters, invented, where you kind of soak it and it steams. It's made out of like a, I don't know, like this like hacky sack looking thing. Sure, it works great. Never used it. But I like to in particular use these two. This is my metal, really thick stainless steel coiled brush. This is coiled, and you can use this while the grill's hot. And this usually takes care of the majority of the gunk for me with the scraper on the back. But then I also have this nylon bristled one, and it's a thick bristle. And this guy you can only use when the grill's cold. So you can't use this while the grill's hot, it'll melt the bristles. These two take care of the majority of the work for me. Now that doesn't mean that we're completely out of the woods. You still need to inspect your grill brushes. For example, I'm looking at this one right now and the coils are breaking. I have some steel bristles that have uncoiled or unwind and they're now sticking out. So this one needs to be replaced really, really soon. But that's part of barbecue maintenance. Make sure you are buying safe utensils to clean your barbecue. Avoid the cheapy stuff, the little bristled ones. Invest in safe alternatives and then inspect them periodically to make sure that they're still working as intended and they're not damaged. And lastly, if you're one of the lucky ones and you have an outdoor sink, a utility sink, I've seen a lot of folks before that will actually take out the grill grates and give them a deep clean in an outdoor sink, scrub them like any other cast iron thing, and get them back to tip-top shape. So many different ways to clean your grill, but the moral of the story is make sure you do it periodically if you want to keep your grill in tip-top shape, keep it lasting forever, and always getting the best results. That's it for me, guys. I hope you found this video informative, and if you did, please consider subscribing, and I will catch you on the next one. Take care, everybody.